everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katey. I go by Katey Flowers all over the internet, and today I wanted to talk about soul decks. It's a topic that kind of comes and goes in the tarot community online, at least the one that I'm a part of, that I participate in, and I think it's really interesting. And I also wanted to talk about it because I think there are elements of it that concern me, but also I'm aware that I've kind of been a big part, or at least I've played a role in that discussion and that use of that word, you know, throughout the last few years. So of course, if you've been around my channel for a little while, you will know that the deck that I often refer to as my soul deck is the Gill Tarot. This deck is just really special to me, and I use a lot of language around it like soul deck because I don't know how else to describe it. I did have a really kind of crazy, synchronistic, beautiful experience in discovering this deck. It honestly was one of those experiences that's kind of really hard to pinpoint and to, you know, kind of break down and explain and express in words. They feel too limited. And for me, as much as I do feel like this deck is special, and I do feel somehow like connected to it in a way that I don't know how to explain. That me as a very agnostic person, it exists, that relation to it just kind of doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. And so that's why I use words like soul deck, because I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know how else to communicate that with you guys. Having said that though, I don't think the Gill Tarot would be classed as my favorite deck. It is certainly nowhere even close to being my most used deck. In fact, I very rarely use the Gill Tarot these days. Don't get me wrong, I do use it and I do love it. But if I'm thinking about the decks that I love to use, that I go to, the Gill Tarot is not even in the top 10. I've spoken before about the Gill Tarot and how I use it and how it's very intuitive for me, how as soon as I saw the images, they sparked something in me. Like I just had this kind of instant connection with it, which is amazing. And I want to be able to be honest in sharing my experiences of decks, but I am also wary of the fact that I feel like to an extent I may have contributed to some kind of, I don't know, pie in the sky, unattainable idea of some kind of special deck that just is like waiting for everybody to discover their soul deck. And I worry that that has led to some people feeling like, I don't know, like they're always on this hunt for the deck, and they buy any and every deck that might be the deck because they don't want to miss out on finding the deck. And I don't know, I don't like that. I don't know that necessarily there is that deck out there for everyone. And I also worry that it kind of, that idea kind of creates this idea that you don't need to develop a relationship with a deck, that it should just kind of happen naturally, that it should just be instant. And even though my experience of the Gill Tarot was sparks straight off the bat, like they just happened even just through the screen when I saw the 9 images on Eclectic Tarot for the first time, it was instant attraction. I still had to work at developing a relationship with the Gill Tarot. Certainly it was a lot easier and flowed a lot more than most decks, but there was still a lot of work to do on my part. And there continues to be. There continues to be a lot of learning and growing with the Gill Tarot. I have had incredible readings with the Gill Tarot, but every now and then I do draw blanks. I don't have perfect readings with the Gill Tarot every single time, because some days I'm just not, you know, on point. Some days the cards just don't make sense to me. And that's not because the Gill Tarot isn't special. I just think this idea of what a soul deck is or should be, I don't know, I think it's too narrow. It's too narrow. Honestly, if you told me I could only ever have one deck for the rest of my life, as much as it would break my heart, I probably wouldn't pick the Gill Tarot. Not because I don't have that incredible experience with it, but because my tarot practice is bigger than that. And to really be a practitioner and a reader of tarot, I would need something that I can use in more ways than the Gill Tarot allows me to. And so I would probably pick something boring like the Rider-Waite-Smith. I don't know, if we're going to talk about soul decks, I suppose we can talk about soulmates and how we kind of frame those two ideas. For me, I don't believe that there is only one person for each of us, and that if we don't find that one person, we're like missed out on the one opportunity for true love. I don't buy that. And I think just as with relationships, people who have this idea of the soulmate and like this need to search them out and find them often have a really unhealthy view of what a good relationship is and can be. And it's also, I think, it perpetuates this idea that relationships don't require work, that if it's true love, it just happens. I think rather than being the aim in life for the majority, I think that's a very, very rare, unique experience. And I don't think it's necessarily one we should strive for. I've had other really great experiences with decks where, you know, it's just been sparks and it's just clicked and it's been wonderful, and my experience has just been like, whoo, buzzy. Decks like the Sakurai Beto, the Idiosyncra deck, the Fantastic Menagerie, the Saltwater reading cards, the Dreamtime reading cards, there's a whole bunch of decks. And I mean, all of those relationships feel different, but I suppose my point is that having the Gill Tarot in my life didn't automatically like satisfy every single emotional and spiritual need in my tarot life. So it's this funny thing of wanting to be honest and be able to express and share a really, really cool experience that I've had with this deck, with the Gill Tarot, but also wanting to balance that with, I don't know, a bit of reality, I suppose, that just because I've described the Gill Tarot as a soul deck in the past because that's the best language I've had for it, I don't also want to be perpetuating this idea that there is only one deck for me, or that this is the ultimate deck for me, and therefore you need to be going out and finding the deck for you. Because I have had people say that to me. They'll be like, oh, I got that deck because I thought it would be my soul deck, but it's just not quite right, so I'm still on the hunt. And I worry about that. I worry about that, and I'm sorry for my part in that role if that's how you've interpreted what I've shared about the Gill Tarot. Because I think unless you have a healthy idea of what a soul deck could be, even if you do happen to find whatever that is for you, you're probably still going to be disappointed, because no deck can be everything to one person, I don't think. I'm not saying that you need more than one deck to be a tarot reader at all. You only need one and that's it. But having said that, I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect deck, even a perfect deck for you. I don't think there's such a thing. I hope that your tarot practice is not a treasure hunt. I hope that that is not the entirety or even the majority of your tarot practice. A treasure hunt of continuously looking for that deck that may or may not even exist. So this isn't a very long video. I just kind of wanted to clarify some things around that as much as I love the Gill Tarot, as much as I've had this really amazing magical experience with it, it's not my most used deck. It's not some kind of perfect deck. Yes, it's very special to me in a way that I don't know how to describe, and so therefore I've used language like soul deck, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. It doesn't mean that it's my favorite. It doesn't mean that it's my most used. And it doesn't mean that it's the only deck for me. And if you're kind of yearning for and holding out for the day that you finally get the deck, you finally figure out what it is and you get it in your hands, and all of a sudden everything clicks into place and you all of a sudden understand the cards in a way you never have before and you become the reader you've always wanted to be, I don't think that that ideal exists. And even if it does, I think it comes to some of us in really synchronistic and beautiful ways. It's not something that we like hunt down. If it happens, it probably is one of those things that just happens to you. So I just want to kind of, I don't know, remind you, I suppose, that you don't need the perfect deck to be a tarot reader. You don't need the perfect deck to be a good tarot reader, to have an expansive, amazing experience with the cards. And if you kind of feel like you do, then maybe you should just stop looking for a little while. Maybe you need to get out of that headspace and just play around with the cards that you do have and see how much of a good relationship you can develop with them when you invest that time and when you stop looking elsewhere for something better. I don't know if we're going to use the, analogy of relationships again. We've all seen those movies where the protagonist, just cannot see that their best friend is their ideal partner because they're too busy looking everywhere else and too busy imagining this idea of a relationship that just isn't realistic and isn't even what you really wanted. It's great when we have really kind of unexplainable, awesome, buzzy, fizzy relationships and experiences with cards. But I think rather than kind of putting all that pressure on a deck of cards, we need to take a lot of responsibility too in how we work with our cards and how we develop relationship with our cards and how we kind of hone and work on our craft and get better and get more in tune with our cards and our intuition. That is a lot of work, and I think putting too much pressure and too much weight on this idea of the perfect deck that will magically do all of that for you, I don't know, it seems really counterintuitive. And as with many things, I don't think there is one true soulmate, soul deck for us either. We are complex, nuanced beings. There's probably lots of decks that could fill this role of soul deck for me. It just so happens that the Gill Tarot was the one that fell into my lap and that I made that connection with. That kind of, that idea of soul deck, I don't know, was just, I suppose, present at that time for me. And so, like, I don't know if I imprinted on the deck or the deck imprinted on me. I don't know how that works. But, you know, it had as much to do with me and where I was at the point of time that I discovered the Gill Tarot as it does with the Gill Tarot being some kind of magic perfect deck for me. And there are lots of other decks that kind of fill a part of my heart and soul in a way that does feel magical and feels amazing and synchronistic. There's a lot of decks that do that for me. And if it ever happened, as sad as I would be to see the Gill Tarot leave my life, I wouldn't be a lesser reader because of it. I don't need the Gill Tarot to be a good reader, to enjoy tarot, to learn from tarot. The Gill Tarot doesn't complete me. It's just something that I really enjoy and that feels really special. And those are kind of two different things. I don't know. I don't want to have a codependent, toxic relationship with a deck where it's like, it is the one deck and if I don't have it, then I'm not complete and I'm not good enough. Like that just doesn't sound healthy. So maybe if you're obsessing over this idea of a soul deck, whether you feel like you found it or not, which I think is more commonly the case, maybe just kind of take a step back and have a look at the decks that you do have and really work on appreciating them and let go of this idea of the perfect deck, the soul deck, because I don't think it exists for most of us. So as with almost everything in life, try to find the joy right here, right now, rather than like waiting for it, waiting for that perfect deck. Because even if it does exist, that's a big waste of all of this opportunity for joy right now. So anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much more. I hope you kind of get what I mean with this whole thing. And I just kind of feel, as much as, you know, I can't take responsibility for your choices, fam, I feel a little bit of responsibility in terms of the way that I've spoken about the Gill Tarot, and I just kind of wanted to clear that up, I suppose. As per usual, this video was basically sponsored by my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys all so much for supporting me. I hope you know by now, I've said all the things. I hope you know how much I appreciate it. You really make my online life a lot easier and a lot more fulfilling. A big extra special thank you to Tracy Timmerman, Laurie and Lynette Brown. Thank you guys. If you would like to support me via Patreon, I'll leave a link down below. It's really cool. We've got a book club and a Discord happening over there, and it's a sliding scale starting from just $1. There's lots of other ways to support content creators though. You can comment on our videos, like, share, all of that sort of stuff. We love to hear from you and engage with you. But that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, as always, leave those below. I will do my best to get back to you, and until next time, so much love. Bye.